Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery preparing to check in on the African night crawlers that live in these 276-day-old buckets. And, well, we've been trying to see if we can get things to dry off. So you can see there's no covers here. In the beginning we were running with bubble wrap coverings, and then we demoted the bubble wrap coverings and left only paper coverings, and then eventually the paper coverings were removed too. So now with no coverings, I'm hoping that the material in these systems is drying off a little bit. You can see I'm going to be feeding today with my dry worm food, which I just replenished earlier today. This batch actually has some granola in it, which is an ingredient that I've not yet included in any of my worm chows before. Hopefully it adds a little bit of extra dimension to the food that the worms appreciate. So I'm curious to see if the drying that we're hoping for happens, or are we just... Oops. Sorry. Are we just hoping for something that's never going to occur? Because, you know, as soon as I reach down into this material, I could feel so much moisture. It does seem to me like the idea that we've been kicking around here for a while now does need to become reality in terms of the next steps for these systems to be able to dry off. And that idea that we've been kicking around is to remove the material from these containers so that the material could be in perhaps trays, bus boxes, some sort of bins where there's a little bit more surface area, the material's a little bit less deep, and then hopefully by being set up in different containers like that, it would have an opportunity to dry off a little bit better. Somehow I feel like being down here in these buckets, this material will almost never dry. Perhaps if I was running a fan and forcing airflow across the surface, then maybe we would see a little bit of drying, but it does seem like moving the material into shallower, well, into larger containers where the material could spread out and be shallower would result in us seeing a little bit of drying here. So, but you know, now that I'm contemplating the idea of putting a fan on these things, I'm kind of liking that idea. I might actually follow through with that. So perhaps we'll just have to play it by ear. But for now, the only thing I was interested in was giving these little guys another little feeding of only dry stuff this time. Last time we gave them coffee, which in itself is also a very dry kind of a feeding. And today I had intended to do the same, just stick with a dry food item. And, you know, maybe it would make sense just to leave this system, leave both of these systems to just remain as is, so that that worm chow that I just sprinkled in here could get consumed, but perhaps after another 2 or 3 days, after the majority of the worm chow that's near the surface has been consumed, perhaps it would make good sense to position a fan to, you know, blow air down into both of these systems to, you know, kick out any humid air that could be lingering in over the material and preventing ongoing drying. This is, you know, not to say that no drying has occurred, because it does seem like the material is perhaps a little bit more crumbly, a little bit less muddy than it was. But it's been 12 days now since that last check-in, and the difference is minimal, you know. And I think we already noticed that, you know, we thought that perhaps in the very first attempt of simply removing the plastic coverings and leaving paper coverings only, that we'd see a fair bit of drying, but that yielded virtually none. Because even by having only just a sheet of newspaper on the surface, we saw very little drying. So I think you need to give the surface a little bit more access to the air, and if the air doesn't move across the top surface, it might need to be moved using a device like a fan or something. And you know, maybe we'll give it a few days of getting blown on by a fan to see if that helps. But if the next time we come in here, we still see stuff that's still holding on to its moisture way more than it needs to, then I do suspect that moving these bucket's contents over into bus bins to allow for a little bit more drying so that we can eventually consider harvesting these castings. It might be the way to go at this point. So, coming back in with a little bit more of my worm chow, my new batch. Besides granola, there's cantaloupe seeds in here, pepper seeds, even a handful of just dry leaves, you know. I figured, let's give them a combination of stuff that they like. Oh, how do you like that? We got ourselves a mating pair of worms right here. When the worms kind of get together in this weird configuration, that's two worms actually attached to each other mating, which is always a nice thing to see. So kind of feel bad disturbing that activity. Hopefully I put them back into the bin and they don't feel so disturbed that they've got to disconnect from each other and stop what they were doing there, because what they were doing there is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. But as far as feeding these two containers go, I think we're done. I've got a couple things to take care of getting cleaned up and put away, but that's all boring. I'm not going to waste your time with that. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.